doesn't love you back, and you toss and turn at 3 in the morning, and you hear a train cross a distant track. There in the dark, some words start forming, and you write a song. Maybe it'll make the night easier to get through it. Maybe it'll ease the pain, but that's not why you do it. It's not a temporary, momentary, ordinary passion. You write a song because you have to.
Hi, and welcome to Songwriter Connection. I'm Dave Lenahan. I'm glad you've joined us, and you're in for a real treat tonight because we're going to enjoy the music and get to know one of the best in the business. The guy's written some incredible songs. And let me just tell you about a few of them, okay? If you're like me, you've cranked this one up on the radio and sung along to it many times. Remember Real Good Man from Tim McGraw? He wrote it. If You Ever Stop Loving Me, that's Montgomery Gentry. Sung along to that one a lot. Gretchen Wilson's #1 song from back in May, Homewrecker. Who wrote that one? That would be our guest. And there's many others too, so you'll get to know him tonight. Stay right where you are. I want to thank our sponsors before we go any further, and those are people like Buddy Rogers Music. Buddy Rogers, 3 great locations here in the Cincinnati area, including one of my favorite hangouts there on Beachmont Avenue. And also, the Ohio Center for Broadcasting. We've got a student crew that's helping us out tonight. Over here on this camera, we've got the Hawk Man, Matthew Hawkins. Dr. Willie Willie on the camera that I'm looking at right now. Dr. Willie, I want to mention he is the program coordinator of our internet radio station, which is 80s.beonair.com. And if you enjoy the music of the 80s, check that out sometime. Internet radio is happening, and these guys make that go. So it's really kind of neat. Also want to spend some time to tell you about an event that's coming up in September. Mark your calendars for September 10th and 11th. That is the 2nd annual Taste of Claremont. That is quite an event. Lots of great food, but lots of great music too. In fact, one of the producers of this show, our NSAI coordinator, Gregory Scott Althammer, has been working on bringing some great songwriters in for that event. In fact, our guest is going to be part of that event. He will play Sunday night along with Josh Grayson, and that's pretty cool because he wrote his first big song, I Want to Live. And that's a perfect segue into our introduction, and I am just so excited to introduce this gentleman to you. I will tell you that he's a great musician, and he's done session work in Nashville on guitar, but he's also a great piano player. Went to college on a piano scholarship. So he's a musician, he's a songwriter, he's a singer, fabulous performer, a producer, a mentor, and we're real happy to have him enjoy the music and the genius of Mr. Rivers Rutherford.
I just learned to stay out of his way. There've been street fights, blue lights, long nights with the world sitting on my chest, and it just showed me how much I could take. Hard rain, bad luck, yeah, well, life's tough, but that's alright, I'm okay. It ain't nothing but another day, only God knows where I'd be if you ever stop loving me. The bank man, the boss man, the lawman are all trying to get their hands on me, and I ain't even done one thing wrong. I've been way late, freight train, shortchanged to buy bigger and better men, and all I got to say is bring it on. Hard rain, rough roads, so my life goes, but that's alright, I'm okay. It ain't nothing but another day, only God knows where I'd be if you ever stop loving me. I need you, I gotta have you in my life by my side, every day of my life, every night that I breathe and I
I still say there is nothing like hearing a big hit song by the guy who wrote it. And our guest on Songwriter Connection is Mr. Rivers Rutherford's big song for Montgomery Gentry.
Yeah, it was. That was their first #1, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an honor, huh? Yeah. I got to tell you, I saw you in April. We go down for the symposium in Nashville. It's a big songwriting festival. And I saw you in the round at Douglas Corner with Anthony Smith and Tammy Kidd, who you're producing.
Right, that's right, yeah. That was a great night, man.
Great show. Yeah, and I'll just never forget, you started it off, and it was, he just looks at me, he says, do y'all mind if we just rock and roll tonight? And I think you went right into that song, and you got everybody going. I think you guys could have played all night. It was
I appreciate it. You know, I grew up in Memphis, and rock and roll has just been a part of my upbringing. My dad and I would sit at the kitchen table for hours playing those old Elvis songs, or all those old rockabilly songs, and I love to rock, you know, that's my thing.
That's great. I was just going to ask you about Memphis. Coming up in Memphis, growing up in Memphis, you can't be not influenced by the blues and Elvis.
No, no, you can't get it. In fact, a buddy of mine told me, he says, man, because, you know, country music really doesn't have that R&B backbeat to it until the past, really, 10 years. Yeah. So when I first moved to Nashville, a friend of mine said I was trying to play everything real straight and hillbilly like what I'd heard on the radio, country radio, which I love, you know, but it's just not a part of my musical vernacular, so to speak. And I was talking to this friend of mine, I said, man, how in the world do you figure out how to straighten it out? He said, buddy, you've already drank too much of that Memphis water, you can't do it.
So use it and go.
Exactly, go with it. And so I embraced it, exactly.
Yeah, and you did, and you really kind of brought it to a new level with some of these hits that we're hearing on the radio.
Well, thank you very much.
So let's talk about how it started for you. Did you know at a very early age this is the career you wanted to do?
Absolutely. You know, I grew up about 4 or 5 blocks from Graceland.
Did you really?
So, oh yeah, so I'd ride my bicycle up there and I'd peek through the fences and see if I could catch a glimpse of Elvis or him and his girlfriends or whatever back there. And I actually did get to meet him one time. I was a little bitty thing. But yeah, so, you know, and I knew from early on, Elvis had his figures on his gates, you know, playing the guitar. I said, I got to have one. So I got one for Christmas. And I figured out how to tune it so I could make some noise out of it, you know. And this little church that I grew up going to, the youth director gave free lessons one summer, and I went down and he gave me a chord chart. And I came home, my daddy and I would figure out all those old rock and roll songs off that chord chart, and I'd just experiment. I'd play chords until he said, that's the right chord. Wow. And he'd sing along, you know.
Now, your father a musician?
He is,
guitar his instrument?
No, he was a piano player.
But he picked it up as well, though.
He did. I taught him actually how to play when I was about 11. I taught him how to play guitar, and he, you know, he's got a natural talent for music, and he's a great singer. I can remember as a kid, Daddy would sing, and it was just electric, you know. I found an old tape of us not long ago when I was just a little kid and him singing, and man alive, he was great.
Wow, that's awesome. Big influence in your life.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Very encouraging, too.
Elvis and Daddy.
Elvis and Daddy, that's right, man. That's exactly right. That's right.
Well, I want to talk about how it started happening for you. I know you went to college on a piano scholarship, right?
Yeah, I sure did.
And how is this? If you want to be a songwriter, go to college and study English and piano. That's a great combination, huh?
It worked out okay for me. You know, I did. I went on a piano scholarship, and I can remember the little practice rooms they had at Ole Miss is where I went to school.
Ole Miss,
Ole Miss, University of Mississippi. And they had these little rooms with pianos in them that you'd practice in. And I'd get in there and start writing songs, and the piano professor would walk by and say, now, Rivers, these are really meant to practice classical music, you know. And I just had all I could take. And, and they were very fine people, fine music department, but I took a different track, you know. Okay. So I traded in my music scholarship for an English major. So I kind of had a double major in college.
Right. Was writing always an interest to you?
Oh, yeah, yeah. In fact, when I was about, I guess 9, I was 9. My dad and I were in the kitchen singing, and my mother, who's eventually went deaf, but at the time she was just starting to lose her hearing, and loud music and noises really kind of bother her. Yeah. And as you can tell, I sing and I play pretty loud, so does my daddy. So we were wailing in the kitchen, and she was doing dishes, and we got finished, and my father said, Charlotte, and that's her name, said, Charlotte, what do you want to hear? And she said, nothing. So as a typical 9-year-old kid, as a smart aleck, I went back to my bedroom and I wrote this little song called Nothing, you know.
Was that your first song?
That was my first song. So I brought it in and played it for, you know, next time she said that, I played her Nothing. And my dad, I can remember him sitting at the table, I was playing it, and he kind of cocked his head and he said, that's pretty good. You ought to write another one, you know. So I did.
That is so fun.
Yeah.
I sat down at a recent co-writing session, and we said, you know, what kind of ideas were knocking them around? I said, I got nothing. And that turned out to be the title of the song we wrote. I got nothing.
Man, you write what you got. That's
right,
my
you write
motto.
what you got.
Exactly. You better believe it.
Great. Let's talk about, now in 1989, you had some first success. And I've heard a couple of different stories about how this happened. You had a song that was cut by the Highwayman. We're talking about Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson. Oh my goodness, those guys cut your first song. And I've heard conflicting stories now. I mean, you climbing a fence to the producer's house, did that happen?
That's true, yep.
Tell me that story.
Well, again, I was in school at Ole Miss, and I was writing for a guy named Chips Moman.
Okay, well, he's a legend.
He's a legend in the record
He
business.
produced, if you don't know, he produced songs for Elvis and Always on My Mind from Willie, and it's big time, big time.
All that early Highwayman stuff. But he asked me if I knew who the Highwaymen were, and I said no. At the time, I was more of an R&B, rock and roll fan. And I knew who all those guys were individually, but not collectively. And so he said, well, I'm cutting this group called the Highwaymen, and I'd like for you to write a song for it. So I went back down to college, and I wrote this song, and I remember playing it for my roommate. And I said, what do you think about this? He said, man, you got to go play this for him. This is really a good song. So I called Chips. I said, man, I'm going to drive up to Memphis to play this song. He said, well, okay. And I got in the car and drove up, and well, Chips had this house in Memphis with a big fence around it and a gate with the keypad and acreage and dogs and the whole thing. And rang that bell, and nobody answered. And there were cars up there. I could tell he was home. And I sat out there for a long time, ringing the bell, honking the horn, no answer. So I said, well, shoot, I guess I'll just head back to Ole Miss, you know, and back the car up and get ready to take off. And I said, no, I drove all the way up here. He's going to hear my song. So I pulled up on the sidewalk, parked it, got out, jumped the fence, and the alarm started going off, man. And he had these two German Shepherd guard dogs that came running down the hill after me, and all these old, great big oak trees, you know, like this, in the front yard. The lowest branch was 15 feet, and I made it. I jumped high enough when those dogs came down. But he came out and called the dogs off and brought me up to the house, and I played him the song, and he said, I'm going to take those guys in the studio and record them, if only to cut that song.
Wow.
And 2 weeks later, I drove up to Nashville, and I opened the door to the studio, and there's Waylon and Willie and Johnny Cash and Chris Christopherson and Glenn Campbell's there holding the guitar, and John Prine. And,
oh, my God. A little intimidating?
Yeah, of course. I was 21 years old, but I wasn't going to give it up for him for a second,
absolutely.
you know.
Yeah.
I went in there, and he says, Rivers, why don't you play your song for these boys, you know. And so I picked up, sat down, played the guitar, and I remember when I got finished, as soon as I finished the song, Christopherson says, well, hell, that's right up our alley.
Wow.
Yeah, and I said, I'm in.
One of the
It
best
was awesome.
songwriters who ever was.
Yeah,
telling
no
you that, that's
question.
just got to be
It was humbling, it was.
validation, doesn't it?
It really was.
I don't want to put you on a spot. Is that a song you do anymore?
You know, I don't. I could play a little bit for you. I mean, I'll see what I can do.
Just to touch it?
If I can remember it.
I am a shotgun rider for the San Jacinto line. The desert is my brother. My skin is cracked and dry. I was riding on a full coach, and everything was fine till we took a shorter road to save some time. The bandits only fired once. They shot me in the chest. They may have wounded me, but they'll never get the best of better men. 'Cause I'll ride again. I am a river gambler. I make a living dealing cards. My clothes are smooth and honest, but my heart is cold and hard. I was shuffling for some Delta boys on a boat for New Orleans. I was the greatest sharp they'd ever seen. But the captain bumped a sandbar and an ace fell from my sleeve. They threw me overboard as I swore I didn't cheat, but I could swim, and I'll ride again. We are heroes of the homeland, American remains. We live in many faces and answer many names. We will not be forgotten, we won't be left behind. Our memories live on in mortal minds, and poets pen. We'll ride again. this farm. I make a living off the land. I ride a John Deere tractor. I'm a liberated man. But the rain, it hasn't fallen since the middle of July. And if it don't come soon, my crops will die. Bank man says he likes me, but there's nothing he can do. He tells me that he's coming, but those clouds are coming too. He ain't my friend. Now ride again. I am an American Indian. My tribe is Cherokee. My forefathers loved this land. They left it here for me. But the white man came with boats and trains and his dirty factories and poisoned my existence with his deeds. Nature is our mother, we are sucklings at her breast. He who tries to beat her will lose her to the rest. I'll never win. Now ride again. We are heroes of the homeland, American remains. We live in many faces and answer many names. We will not be forgotten, we won't be left behind. Our memories live on in mortal minds. And poets pen, we'll ride again. We'll ride again. We'll ride again.
Wow.
You asked me for a piece of it. Can I get fun there? I couldn't stop playing. I haven't played that in a long time.
Really great. And how it started for Mr. Rivers Rutherford. A song cut by the Highwaymen, Willie, Waylon, Johnny, and Chris. You got to be thinking at your age, you go, how am I going to top that?
Yeah, well, you know, not really. I thought at 21, I thought, well, you know, this is natural. I'm in the
That's
music
natural.
business, you know.
Yeah.
And that was, let me just make this perfectly clear. That was the highlight of my career so far. It was the first thing that happened for me. But I mean, I've had a lot of good things happen. But that was really something. It was
really
great.
something else. Yeah, Rivers Rutherford is our guest. You're watching Songwriter Connection, and thank you for joining us. Rivers, fantastic songwriter, one of the best in the business up from Nashville. Put a workshop on for NSAI, our local chapter here in Cincinnati and Dayton. Has graciously agreed to come on the show and talk to us a little bit about the craft of songwriting. Now, about 1993 or so, you've had some success, and you just said, well, I'm going to make the move to Nashville. And that a big decision at the time? You think that's where I got to be?
No, it really was. I had met my wife and asked her to marry me, and you know, really in my mind, I was making a decision between the music business and her. I didn't know that you could do both, and I just got very fortunate. I married somebody that really easygoing and kind of rolls with the punches and doesn't expect a lot. She is grateful for what she has. It's a wonderful woman.
Well, you want to talk about success right there. You got 4 beautiful kids too. And
yeah, I was successful before I ever moved to Nashville, no
Absolutely.
doubt. I had 4 beautiful children, but. She had 1 more year of school to go. She was going to Ole Miss. We were living in Memphis. She was commuting, and I was selling real estate. I got in the real estate business for 1 year, and at the end of that year, I kind of, towards the end of her scholastic year, I looked back over the finances and realized that I had sold 1 piece of property, and it was a recording studio that I'd sold to a buddy of mine in the record business, and the listing agent tried to kind of snake my commission from me, you know. And I said, well, man, if this is what the real estate business is, and really I was making a living playing in bars on the weekends. That's how I was feeding the family, so to speak. So I said, if this is what the real estate business is, you know, getting screwed, essentially, then I think the record business getting screwed would be a lot more fun. So, yeah, I woke my wife up about 4 o'clock one morning. I had that epiphany, and I said, honey, you want to move to Nashville? This is about 2 weeks before she graduated. And she said, name the time, let's go. She was ready to go. So she graduated, and 2 days later, we loaded a U-Haul and moved to Nashville.
And what did you do from there?
You know, I did everything and anything anybody would let me do, literally. I had still had my relationship with Chips, and first thing I did when I got there is I said, man, you've got to pay me a little bit to write songs, and he agreed to pay me $200 a week, and that helped. My wife taught some school, and I did everything from, I worked in a plant nursery, to, I wrote lead sheets for, at the time, everybody, you know, country music was booming, and there were thousands of people trying to, exactly. and a lot of venture capital there, people trying to develop talent, and a lot of the people were singers, but they didn't know how to come up with parts, so I'd find harmony parts for people and write them out for them. Did jingles. I emceed some beauty pageants for a while. That was probably the worst job I ever had. But yeah, I did a lot of different things, and landed a record deal at Giant Records. Did an album there. Wasn't all that successful, but it was a lot of fun. And ultimately,
a lot of stuff that you wrote, you know.
Yeah, I pretty much wrote the whole album. Yeah, and from that I went on to sign a publishing deal with MCA Music Publishing.
Wow. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just started clicking for you, right?
It did. It was fun. Shelley Wright cut "Shut Up and Drive."
Shut Up and Drive.
That was my first radio hit. You know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it was that was a thrill.
Great. Listen, I want to talk you out of another song here.
Yeah, shoot
but I want to show your CD because this is a great CD. I picked this up when I was in Nashville. Can I put this on camera 3 or 2? On 3. Here we go. Rivers' CD. Great CD. It's available on his website, which is www.riversrutherford.com. So check it out. You can pick up the CDs, and there are some hits on this CD. You'll hear "Real Good Man," the Tim McGraw song. "That's a Woman." Mark Wills did that, I believe.
Yeah.
And "Heavy Liftin'," Blake Shelton did, and just some great stuff. You're going to enjoy it. So pick it up. And you're working on a new album, aren't you?
I am. Yeah, I'm putting one together as we speak.
Can we hear anything maybe from the new one?
Yeah, shoot ya.
If I had it my way, this would be the first time that you made love, and I would be the first man that your hands touched. But we've both done our share of living, taking chances we were given. Really, there's no point in looking back. I don't care if I'm your first love, but I'd love to be your last. If I could do it over, well, I'd have waited for this moment, so I can give my heart to you unbroken. But if our mistakes brought us together, doesn't really matter whether we were saints or sinners in the past. I don't care if I'm your first love, I just love to be your last. I see when I look at you, and all I see is what I'm feeling down inside, and all I'm feeling is this feeling that I finally got it right. I wake up tomorrow, I'm gonna wrap my arms around you, and thank my lucky stars I found you. And know your heart holds so much more than any man has touched before. Nothing matters more to me than that. See, I don't care if I'm your first love, I just love to be your last. I don't care if I'm your first love, I just love to be your last.
You're watching Songwriter Connection. That's Rivers Rutherford. Man, I'm just going to make a prediction. I think you're going to remember the first time you heard that song. I'll not forget the first time I heard it was in Nashville in April at Tin Pan South. These guys were rocking and rolling, going around sharing these songs, and all of a sudden Rivers comes out with this ballad, and when he was done, the place was silent. They were just amazed and awed by that song. Wonderful song. It's going to be on your new CD?
It sure will, yeah.
Wow, and that's something to watch for. Check the website.
That's right.
I'm sure they'll let you know when it's available, and you'll want to pick it up. Rivers Rutherford, just been great to have you here. You know, I want to talk to you a little bit about the craft of songwriting, and I know you mentor and you teach songwriters, up-and-coming songwriters. In fact, we had a person on the show not too very long ago that just cites you as one of her biggest influences, and that was Roxy Dean.
Oh, man, I love Roxy.
Yeah, she's
Great gal. She's been a very good friend for me and Allie. In fact, she was one of the first people that Allie and I met when we moved to Nashville.
Really?
Yeah.
How about that?
Great writer.
Good. What kind of advice can you give? I mean, you know, when you're doing these teachings, you know, you're seeing lots of different talent, and you get people with a lot of desire and passion, and you got to bridle it a little bit. Where do you go?
I tell everybody the same thing. Do everything in your power to avoid making songwriter your vocation.
Okay.
If you can keep it your avocation, then you're in much better shape. If you can't avoid it, then you're supposed to be a songwriter. That's what I did. I mean, I literally tried everything I could to keep from making this my living. And it's the only way I could make a living, and it's the only thing that really brought me satisfaction. So I finally, I wrote on a back of a business card on 1/25/96. I kept imposing these artificial kind of deadlines by which if I didn't have something accomplished in the music business, I'd go back to law school or whatever. And I finally made a commitment. On 1/25/96, I accepted the fact in faith that God Almighty has put me in the music business in accordance with and fulfillment of His divine will. Wow. And then anytime I started doubting whether or not I was supposed to be doing this, I thought, well, you know what, I accepted it in faith, not in fact, but in faith, that this was it. This was the thing that I'm supposed to do with my life. And I pursued it. And you know, I didn't think about money. I didn't think about success or anything like that. I just did what I did for a living, you know, and God's been good, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And you say that we had Jeffrey Steele on the show. We were very lucky to have Jeff on the show, and I asked him pretty much the same question, and he said, you know, I look back on it, and I think the reason that I made it was because I wrote it down. I wrote it down that I was going to accomplish this. And you wrote it down in faith, and it happened. And so you set clear-cut goals.
I think so, yeah, and you have to be committed to it. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And again, if it's not, I mean, it's a very difficult way to make a living, and it's a tough life. You know, it takes a special person to be married to somebody.
Oh yeah, it surely does. I want to talk about writing a song, and I know today in Nashville, you set your appointments and you write, and you probably write a lot. I mean, how many appointments a week do you?
I do 5.
You 5 a week?
I do. I write every day. In fact, as we speak, I'm booked from. I had a guy that called me on the way up to Cincinnati this trip. On my cell phone and said, man, can we get together and write? And I said, you know what? It'd be mid-October before I could book you.
Wow.
So I'm booked every day with a different person.
This gentleman is.
Well, I don't know about that.
That's just incredible.
That's just what it takes. I mean, you got to work like that to make it happen.
So you're constantly juggling. You probably have a lot of songs you're juggling and looking at, and you finally bring it out and look. You know, it's a long process, isn't it?
It is. And which we talked about this earlier. I walk into a room, and if I don't have a good idea, or if I don't have a great idea, and neither does my co-writer, then we look for a good idea. And if we don't have a good idea, we look for an okay idea. And if we don't have an okay idea, we look for a crappy idea, and we write it. But we write what we got to write that day, and I can't tell you how many times I've written a song that's been recorded on a day when neither one of us had a good idea at all. You know, it just got something spilled out, and it worked. So you got to show up.
And this might be a good way to take us out. Maybe you can take us through a song that you didn't think was just a great idea, how that process happened, how you wrote it, take us through the steps, and then maybe show us how it ended up.
Well, you know, it's funny you should say that. I've got a song that I wrote. My wife and I had moved out of the house. I had a song called "Unconditional" that Clay Davidson recorded.
Remember that record?
And it was our first big hit. And my wife, when I think about that title, I think about the night that I got in a big fight with my dad and ran away from home and the whole thing. When my publisher thinks about that title, "Unconditional," he thinks income streams. He thinks, you know, this was the one that made Rivers kind of recouped a lot of the money we invested in him and gave him a name in town where it was easier for him to set me up with people to write songs. My wife thinks about that title, and she thinks Uba Tuba.
Uba Tuba?
Uba Tuba. That's the name of the granite that she got for the kitchen out of the title, you know. So that song was a hit, and she remodeled the kitchen with it. So we had moved out of the house while we were having some floors were finished, and we'd moved in with another couple that had a couple of kids. We had 3, and they had a dog, and we had a dog, and it was crowded, and it was very difficult to find a quiet, private little corner to go be married in, shall we say. And frankly, I was frustrated. So it had been a long time, and I like to be married. So I sat down with a friend of mine to write one day, and Troy Burgess, great songwriter, and we just beat our heads against the wall all morning, went to lunch, came back, worked some more, came up with nothing. Finally, he said, well, you want to call it? And I said, yeah, let's do. Excuse me. And I just picked up my guitar. He was packing up. He's getting ready to walk out the door, and I picked up my guitar, and I said, yeah. I said, baby, light a couple candles, lock the bedroom door, find some sweet soul music, lay a blanket on the floor, and surrender to my patient hand. And he was kind of cutting his eyes over at me, and I paused, and I said, all week I've been your husband. Tonight I want to be your man. Let's go home. And he says, whoa, and he starts unbuckling his guitar case. He said, man, we got to write this, you know. And
wow.
I said, Troy, nobody's going to want to sing this thing. It's old, it's married, it's not young and fresh. And he said, man, we need to write this. So we did. Finished it. I went home. I played it for my wife. And 9 months later, we had our 4th child. That is absolutely true.
Now I remember playing that song on the radio, and we loved it the moment that we heard it. It was a big hit for Andy Griggs.
Yeah.
And we just couldn't get enough of that. I'm sure a lot of people got that same story.
Well, I hope so. I'd like to think that anyway. Yeah.
It's just an awesome song, and that would be a great way to take us out tonight. Rivers, I want to thank you for being on our show. Just great to spend some time and talk with you.
Man, it's been a pleasure, and thank you so much for having me up.
Oh, you've been great. It's just awesome. And please, you at home, pick up his CD, get to know this guy. Come back and see him September the 11th at Taste of Claremont in Batavia. Rivers Rutherford, our guest on Songwriter Connection. Thanks for joining us.
I've talked a little bit about my wife, and this is why I love her.
Every now and then on my way home, I stop at a spot where the wildflowers grow, and I pick a few, 'cause she don't tell me to. I go out with my boys, all right, but most of the time I call it a night before they do, 'cause she don't tell me to. Sunday morning, I'm in church, and my butt and my back and my necktie hurt, but I'm in the pew, 'cause she don't tell me to. Any other woman I've known would have tried to control me, and it would be over. Blame it on my going my own way attitude. But all of that stubbornness melts away when I wake with her head on my shoulder, and I know I've got to love her till my life is through, 'cause she don't tell me to. I got demons and I've got pride, but when I'm wrong I apologize like she's mine to lose, 'cause she don't tell me to. And I got dreams in this heart of mine, but nothing that I wouldn't lay aside if she asked me to, but she don't tell me to.